Thank you very much, Juan. Right. Welcome, Douglas County. My name is Kelly Robinson. I'm chair of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners Transportation Committee. We've got a pretty simple agenda today, so we'll go ahead and just get started. At this particular moment, we're going to go around and call for a roll call just to establish if we have a quorum. If we don't have a quorum, we can still continue on with the committee meeting. We just won't be able to take any legislative action. I'll start with myself. As committee members know, we must acknowledge ourselves by name for the record. Kelly Robinson, chair of the committee, present.
Solomon Rana, present.
Keith Cowart, present.
With that, silence means that we have only three, and we need 4 members to have a quorum. Again, we're going to continue on with the meeting. Director Ron, let me know if a 4th member shows up just for the record. And if we need to come back to an item which is has a legislative component, we can always double back. So we have enough to continue on with our meeting. I do want to acknowledge, is any of our supporting members out there? Is Atlas Russell team up there? Is David Good out there?
Yes, Commissioner, I'm here.
Okay, welcome, greetings, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is anybody from the collaborative out there? Ron, well, Ron's not here, so.
Yes, sir. This is Danielle.
Greetings, welcome, thank you for being here. All right, with that being said, Director Ron, I'm going to turn it back over to you and let's get on to our formal agenda, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of July 18th Transportation Committee meeting minutes. And if everybody's gotten a chance to review, I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second it. Well,
would we be able to vote on it?
We don't have a quorum,
right.
So we're just going to let it lap right now. We can at least acknowledge for concurrency. So we'll pick it up next time if we don't have enough, and we'll adopt it at that time. Keep moving.
All right. Next up is Connect Douglas. With Ron being out, we have Deputy Director of Connect Douglas, Eric Wright, and he's going to introduce his consultant and an update.
Just for a minute, I apologize that Deputy Director Eric Wright, I should have at least acknowledged you for being here in proxy for Director Roberts. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, all.
Yes, sir.
What we have today, we're going to have the collaborative firm speak on the ridership update. And we also, it's not on the agenda, we also have Rachel Hatcher from RS&H, who is going to give us a brief update as to where we are with the transit master plan.
Okay, with that being said, just a minute, Rachel, we'll go ahead, we'll amend the agenda without any objection since it wasn't announced. And so as soon as Danielle is finished, we'll bring you up to speed. Thank you. Danielle, you got the floor.
My apologies on mute. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Director, on if that's okay.
Yes, you should be able to share now.
Okay, give me one moment. It said no, so let me refresh. Okay, now I can. Thank you.
All right, your screen is up.
Thank you. I'm just going to quickly go through some updates from the last time we were together. So first and foremost, the fixed bus ridership. So we are comparing 2022 versus 2023. So from January to July, or from the last time we met, and the information received is from Transitions, Commute Solutions, the third-party transit operator for the fixed route bus system. So we are still trending in growth. That's a positive thing. At times there is a downturn during the summer in ridership, and that is nationwide. At times, people are on family vacations, schools are not in session. One thing that you see at the top there, we are still trending up. From January to July, there are 2,822 additional riders. So from January to July of 22, you see there were a total of 12,449 riders at the time. And then January to July of 23, 15,271 riders, hence the 2,822 additional riders. So we are still trending up to date. And that's what you see next screen here is that graphically. So the trend lines from 2022, which is in green, versus 23, which is in blue. Another KPI or key performance indicator that we were tracking and looking at are customer service or call logs. So, and again, speaking with not only the Douglas County Information Services team, and they've been great about forwarding over information and then having meetings about what that looks like and how we can best dive deeper into KPIs, as well as transition commute solutions. So when someone calls in to 770-949-7665, they have an option of 4. One is Flex or the ADA paratransit, option 1. Option 2 is Transitions Commute Solutions. So if someone wants to have a question about bus routes, fixed bus routes, that's the option 2. Option 3 is our mobility coordinator within Connect Douglas. And then option 4 is customer service, so the level staff at Connect Douglas. And then you do see the trends there as well. We began looking at this in March, and just for clarity's sake, we weren't able to capture January and February because transitions, they started tracking in March once we had some alignment meetings. So just for clarity's sake, that's why it starts from March to date. And then you see the numbers there. It's pretty consistent. So folks that call into transitions, it's a little less than 300 each month in inbound calls, with June being the largest thus far. With a mobility coordinator, it ranges on average from about 140 to about 200, with this month being the highest thus far with 212 inbound calls. And then customer service option 4 this month being the highest of 228. And just briefly, digital support, another KPI we can track from January, and I do apologize, this is from January to July of 23. So when someone looks on or does a search for like Google or even Google Maps, there is a business page we created about 18 months ago that has been widely beneficial for visibility and information. So the top number, 7,651, are the total views to date, January to July. And that's when someone just views the page or just takes a look at the page. 2,380 are the total number of searches. And excuse me, let me pause. The total views, I can say the majority of them are coming from mobile devices, such as a smartphone or tablet, and 61% of that number come from mobile devices. So people are out and about or not, at least on a laptop or a desktop. So let me go back to the total searches, 2,380. And the majority of people just, doing a Google search. It's Douglas County Transportation and Connect Douglas are the top 2, which is an enlightening insight because people are searching for the system by name directly. So that's a good thing. So there's a level of brand awareness. 1,306 are website visits, and that's directly to connectdouglas.com. And 517 are directions. So when someone clicks on the directions, I'm looking how to get to the multimodal transportation center. Events, I just want to give a thank you to all those who participated in the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. It was July 17th, so the last time we spoke, we promoted that, but just wanted to publicly thank everyone, not only who participated, but the purchasing department, of course, David Good, CE&I, and the wonderful folks over at Connect Douglas. It was a packed house over at the Multimodal Transportation Center, over 40 plus in-person attendees. It was Director Roberts gave an update at the Board of Commissioners meeting. The DBE plan, triennial plan, was approved at that time. So I just want to thank everyone involved. They're still continuing streaming views. So they're actually 600 plus. When I did this was more folks already looked at it. So it was in person or hybrid event, in person and streaming live on Facebook at Connect Douglas and Douglas County Happenings. And another fantastic, wonderful job by the communications department in assisting, not only disseminating information, but the day of events and streaming on Facebook. And here are some quick pictures. Top left, I believe it's your top left, is Chris Evans of CE&I. They are the GDOT support services for the disadvantaged business enterprise. And folks stayed over. We ran over for almost about an hour, but people were getting helped. Those who did not currently did not have a DBE got their questions answered. So we're going to continuously be in contact with Chris to see any success stories coming from that July 19th. And then top right is the mobility coordinator is Jessica Hunley. And she actually, there were so many people who were interested in mobility services and potentially becoming a vendor, and listening to what the purchasing director, Ms. Ammons, was referencing during the meeting, and had an opportunity to get questions answered by Jessica as well about mobility services and internal opportunities to become a vendor and participate in projects with Connect Douglas. Bottom left was a testimonial from a current DBE vendor, and then Ms. Ammons answering questions and addressing the crowd there on the bottom right. So we'll be in the marketplace again heavy now that students are back in session. Keep an eye out as far as updates on connectdouglas.com. I can tell you that we'll have a presence at the September 9 Mosaic with the Cultural Arts Center and the free shuttle bus there as well. So people don't have to worry about parking or traffic. They can take the shuttle for free to the September 9th Mosaic. And then the September 22nd health fair at Deer Lake Park. That's the Senior Services Health Fair. We're happy to participate again this year. And that's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on the 22nd. And then, of course, September Saturdays in September the 23rd and 30th with, again, shuttle service. You can park and ride for free at all of those occasions. All of those events at the Multimodal Transportation Center at 8800 Doris Road. And more information will always be posted on connectdouglas.com. And then, of course, Douglas County Happenings e-blast, and then information that we put out in the marketplace. So with that, I say thank you and pause for any questions.
Thank you, Danielle. Again, well done, well stated. I've got one question for you, and two, but one out the gate. Since you got involved, and I think your background, your professional experience is around branding. And I've heard your statistics about 12,000 people have gotten on the bus, and you talked about the online visibility. About 600 people are tracking. No, how many people are tracking in online? What was your number again? People who actually go out there and use mobile devices. You said it's about 61.
Yes, sir. 61% utilize their mobile device to do a search or look for Connect Douglas.
Right. So that being said, do you think that we're accomplishing our objectives? It sounds like we are, but is there any, as we go into the second half of the year, sort of that what I call always the back nine. Is there anything we need to adjust? I mean, I see you're out there in the community. Yes, you're doing high touch and high tech. You got to have both. Everybody's not online, and there's still big voices, people who still believe in the old school high touch. Is there any adjustments that you think, and I'm not putting you on the spot, just part of the conversation, but what do you think? How are we doing? Do we need to make some adjustments? Is there some learning you have that you can offer the county, please?
I'm absolutely glad you asked. We've had some meetings internally this week, and actually some meetings with some senior stakeholders and talking about just that. So first and foremost, you mentioned not everybody has a smartphone. And so in touching and continuing touching that senior populace, so having a stronger role within the health fair, on September 22nd, that's the most immediate. Communicating even more to more and often with the stakeholder or advisory committee to Connect Douglas. I don't want to put her name on the spot, but folks like Ms. Medina, who is on that advisory board, had a lengthy conversation with her just the other day and coming up with other suggestions to round out the remainder of this year. So those are some examples. To also include, as I mentioned before, we hit the seniors and students heavy when classes are in session. So from now until pretty much March, and doing more travel training sessions, which is a one-on-one type of opportunity for folks to listen and ask questions and think and be tangible. So I highly suggest those who don't know or uncomfortable, it's a resource. If anyone wants to have more information, that is an opportunity for to have some one-on-one time. And we can come to them, such as like the senior centers, we've gone to churches. That's an opportunity for us to do more. And then one option too, in addition to the seniors and students and, continuous riders, is also the business community. We also want to continue laying a foundation for the wonderful things that are upcoming with this TMP. So if implement and change needs to happen, there's some groundwork and an easier transition. So for example, we're going to start reaching the business community and the high traffic area locations, such as the downtown corridor, that Route 10, Route 40, those high traffic areas, and touching with them again. We had a pretty good opportunity in getting testimonials and folks from like the downtown square, but we want to have more visibility now that people are out and about. So more signage in their storefronts. What we're going to call a Go Local campaign for the remaining 6 months of the year. So having and building those relationships. So if and when wonderful things happen within the transit master plan and that needs to be implemented, we can just kind of pass the baton hopefully more seamlessly.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for that update. And that's exactly, I was just looking to hear. And this is going to be a perfect segue. So Danielle, just nothing else from my committee. I'm going to keep going. Deputy Director Wright, thank you, Danielle. Introduce your next person, our next guest.
Gladly. We now have Rachel Hatcher from RSNH.
All right, Rachel, before you get started, greetings. I just want to do a little segue here because I want to talk about something we just heard. We talked about participating in gaining access to contracts in transportation. There's the heavy brick and mortar, we're pouring concrete, and then there's professional services such as you. So I just want to broaden this just for a minute. David Good, I want you to also weigh in, and Rana, when we talk about mobility, we talked about this mobility initiative, MMIP. Tell me about what does it mean to qualify? How do I qualify? We're going to spend over $200 million in the county, and and more than that at the state, probably $20 billion, $2 billion. How do people get involved? How do they qualify to be bondable and so forth? Can y'all do that can you help me out, Rachel and Rana and David? Let's have a quick conversation regarding this, please. How do you qualify? I lose everybody.
Sorry, I was on mute. So, Mr. Commissioner, I'm assuming that the question you're asking is how do you qualify as a disadvantaged business enterprise or a woman-owned business enterprise to participate in various types of contracts across professional services, design services, design build services. Is that correct?
That is correct. What is your experience? If you don't mind sharing, yes.
Absolutely. So just for clarification for this committee, RSNH is not a disadvantaged business enterprise or a woman-owned business enterprise. So our unique experience as a consulting firm. I'm going to be sharing through our kind of secondary side of it because we don't qualify. What we do is we have a significant number of qualified team members that we develop through professional relationships, but we also search on the Georgia Department of Transportation DBE and WBE database. So it depends on the skill sets that each of these qualifying firms bring to the table and what project we're bringing them forward for. For example, on the Transit Master Plan, we have 2 firms that are DBE qualified and registered firms, and registered meaning they filled out the application with the Georgia Department of Transportation to be a disadvantaged business enterprise qualified firm. That means they are certified and they appear on the GDOT website as a firm that has met their minimum qualifications and holds that certification. So we, as the prime consulting firm, dedicate a certain percentage of our contract to ensure that we're upholding your minimum standards plus. So we always exceed those minimum standards with our contracts because we're committed to DBE and WBE participation and partnership. So, for example, the collaborative firm is one of our DBE firms on this contract, but we also pulled in Blue Cypress, which is a WBE firm. So we had both types of representation on this contract and exceeded the minimum qualifications by us. So each prime firm has a different level of commitment when they're bringing partners on, and that's up to that firm and the negotiations of that firm with the sub-consultant. Now, you can have other qualifying DBE, WBE firms that are your prime. In that case, they would have teammates that they would bring on that would dilute that percentage of DBE and WBE credit. So let's say you had a prime DBE firm and they had sub-consultants who were not DBEs. Let's say they got 60% of the contract and had to sub out 40%. That means 60% of the value of that contract would be your credits as a county for DBE. So it really depends on the contract, but the first step and the most important step is for the DBE and WBE eligible firms, meaning they're 51% ownership by the specific ethnicity or woman owned, and they apply for that credential through the Georgia Department of Transportation or any other DOT in the country so that they are a certified DBE, WBE. If they are not certified, they do not get credit, nor do you as a county.
Excellent. No, thank you for that. That was excellent. Hold on, I'm coming right back to you and give you your full time. David, yeah, we got this little flow. We're not voting. So David, I'm coming to Director Ronna. So to that point, she talked about professional services. So for example, when it comes to cement or asphalt and so forth, give a little qualifier and descriptor of how, what are the rules and what are the thresholds for that for us? Can you speak to that a little bit? For the big
Yes.
thing, please.
For sure, sir. Being a federally certified agency, being an LLP agency, we do have a strong focus on DBE participation and those DBE goals set by Fed and GDOT level at the state. Part of that is, like Rachel mentioned, there are a few qualifying criteria that qualifies you as a DBE, and they have to go through a GDOT certification process that Connect Douglas held a workshop on to basically help them qualify for and meet those requirements. Once they are qualified, there are some other caps that I think GDOT enforces, which is the number of employees they have, set a revenue that their firm generates. I believe that number is roughly 300 folks. They have to be less than that to be DBE, and then their revenue is, I believe, 100 million or somewhere in that ballpark range. That basically qualifies them as a rather smaller firm owned by a disadvantaged or a minority owner. And then part of that is when we hire consultants, when we hire our maintenance contractors, such as our resurfacing, and then basically what we do is we enforce the goal of 15% for our DOT requirements, and that ensures that we get equal or I would say decent participation of DBE firms. Now, a challenge in that is sometimes your work gets a little too technical. and then you don't have enough DBEs that are qualified to do that technical job for you. And that is the reason 15% that we follow is a goal, and it's not a set aside quota. So in case you miss it, we have to prepare and document a reasonable justification. And sometimes it is that you did not find the right DBE to support you in that task. But I believe DBE goals and program has been very successful in the state of Georgia. We've had many firms who have started off as a DBE and then eventually rose to the ranks of a prime firm on most of those contracts, many of those similar nature contracts. And we're continuing to do so. And I believe the workshop that Connect Douglas held is exactly what we need to bring in or introduce more DBEs from our local region, which is Douglas County.
No, thank you for that, Director Rollins. So to Rachel's point, they had a teaming to come to go after this TNP. She assembled a group of individuals. So her group was the prime, duly noted, disclosed. But you had subcontractors, other professional services who got credit along the way for participating in this this bid delivery of services. And to your point, I heard you say, Director Rollins, $100 million. Is that in revenue, or do I have to be a small guy, or do I have to bond for that amount, or what is $100 million in what? Revenue? Or
my understanding is that is the operating revenue. I am not 100% sure about the number, but I'm pretty sure it's either $100 million or a little higher than that. But that is the qualifying criteria for them to remain as a DB. That's basically the cap, and it's operating revenue that we're discussing here.
Great, thank you for that. And last one, David Good, can you speak to your experience, what you saw? So I'm trying to bridge the gap for those who are in play, the decision maker in the county, and you met new individuals who were, are they amongst us? I heard what you said, 40 people were in person, 600 online to view this. Are we seeing people reaching out, they're qualifying as vendors? Are they shovel ready, or they're still in the incubator? What are you seeing, and does our future look promising?
I see it as two ways. Of course, we've done doing business in Douglas County, where we've reached out to companies that need to become DBEs throughout the years. You're finding in Douglas County, you do have a lot of firms that are DBE ready. And so therefore we got a chance to see those people go online, fill out all the paperwork in order to become DBEs. We also have a number of firms that are DBEs, and the best thing that happened to them was they found out that not everything DBE has to do with construction. There could be program managers. There's different type of outlooks that they can be. So we found more and more companies understood that, and they became DBE. They're becoming DBEs now. Earlier, you spoke about the MMIP. That's the Major Mobility Improvement Project. That's by DOT. Basically, everyone that they work with, you have to have a DBE partnership with almost any project with DOT. And for those in the community that's not familiar, the part of the Major Mobility Improvement Project in Douglas County will be the I-20 flyover. It's supposed to come all the way out to, I believe, right there at Factory Shows near the Douglas County border, then going on to the other side of I-20. So that entire, we're on the other side, 285. So that entire corridor will have some beneficial to people in Douglas County, vendors in Douglas County, entrepreneurs, DBEs as well. So they're actually pushing out things from HTMB. They're looking for people who are DBEs. So in my experience, we're running into people who are really interested in doing this work, and they are vendors. There are companies that become vendors with the county, with the city, with areas throughout our region. So I believe the input and the impact and output for Douglas County is very high, just because of this, from reaching out in previous doing business in Douglas County, as well as this last one with our transit, pushing out, looking at minority companies that can be DBE. And then to add one last thing, when it comes to DBEs, it also includes disabled veterans. That's the one class of DBE that is not racial or gender. It's the ones that if you're a disabled veteran.
Thank you for that, Mr. Good. Very good.
Sure.
I appreciate you guys, again, participating in this little commercial. But it was important to bridge the gap, because, again, sometimes it's important to show that there's a bigger picture. There's equal opportunity, access, and treatment. It's not just looking at the big guys do it, but you have a chance to participate in your local government as well in the delivery of services. So thank you, gentlemen, for that. Rachel, back to you, madam. Thank you for that. Being patient with that. You have
Sure. Very important topic. So I did prepare a very brief update for you all as a precursor to the more detailed update that we're preparing for you all in September. So for this agenda, we'll be looking at just a general update on the schedule and some of the hurdles that we have crossed over the last several months. We're going to give a more detailed debrief on the public and stakeholder involvement results, which has been one of the primary focuses of our efforts over the last 2 months. We also are going to provide you with an update on existing conditions and our operational assessment, and then next steps. So our the little red check marks show you the hurdles that we have crossed. We're just over halfway through the study schedule with anticipated deliverables in December of this calendar year.
Rachel,
Yes,
real
sir.
quick, can you speak a little bit closer to the microphone? You're still
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, I can do that. Let me see if I can turn my volume up as well, if that would help. Okay, is that a little bit better?
A little bit better. Just tell it you're far away, but okay, go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. I will speak up and enunciate. So the check marks on the screen demonstrate the project deliverables and tasks that we have completed. So you see those are reflective on the project management plan, launching of the project management team and the technical committee, completing the development of a public involvement plan and initiating and completing those activities, which did include a public survey as well as a ridership survey. And that public survey, it was required that it be statistically valid. So that was a significant push for our team to make sure that we had adequate input from the community. We were completing an existing conditions, future conditions, and operational analysis for the system, and then preparing a public involvement summary that demonstrated the needs, the goals, and the objectives of the community. So on the next slide, you can see the schedule that runs again through the end of the calendar year, with deliverables due in November and then presented to the commission in December. We expect all final delivery of files in January. So the rubber is literally meeting the road this August, September, and October to get all of those deliverables pulled together and to then initiate the next important steps of rolling out the recommendations to the public, the stakeholders, and the public. So the public and stakeholder involvement is a key input for that process. And we had a substantial presence over the last 3 months, with the strongest emphasis on making sure that we were meeting the public where they were. We did that through social media campaigns, text message campaigns, email blasts, press releases, swag bag promotions at other events where we were there as a vendor. We had stakeholder interviews where we understood that having smaller groups with like interests in the community was very important for dialogue, to make sure that we didn't have such a large group with varying interests that you couldn't really adequately get feedback. So we had one-on-one interviews with a significant number of representatives of the community and those that are transit users and transit dependent, for example, seniors, students. We also had literature drops and fact sheets to make sure that if we weren't there in person to engage, we had information available to the community so that they could follow up and provide us with feedback and ask questions. And we did use the project website as a landing place for that type of communication. In addition to those public outreach tactics, we also had a youth forum. We were really excited about that exercise. We invited members of the youth community to come to the transfer center and to share with us what their specific needs are. And it was very enlightening. We learned a lot about what the youth in your community desires in transportation, where they see gaps. We found out where they like to eat, where they want to work, what they like to do in their free time, and where they need transportation for employment and for supplemental education as well. So that one-on-one with them was really valuable to us, because we heard from the stakeholders that that was a very important group and a very important user group for us to focus on. So instead of hearing from the adults what they thought the youth needed, we went to the youth to ask them, and we learned a lot from that. Really, really important information for our origin and destination analysis. So We did complete a statistically valid survey, meaning we got a greater than 10% response rate compared to the population. And that was 1,700 total survey responses, which closed on June the 1st. So we've been analyzing that information and have prepared a technical summary that will provide a little bit greater detail on what those specific responses were. But in summary, we were hearing that there was a desire to have more access to more types of transportation, meaning fixed route is important, but there are some other mobility needs that require more flexibility or locations outside of the current destinations. We also heard a lot about regional connectivity, and that's going to be a significant thing that you're going to see carry on throughout the responses from the public and the stakeholders. For example, folks were saying, well, we have some options locally and we would like to see more, but what we really are lacking is a direct connection to the airport or better connectivity to job shopping and opportunities just outside the county, or we're coming into your county from adjacent counties and we have no way to bridge that gap. Once we get there, we can get on Connect Douglas, but getting there is a challenge for us. So we heard that consistently from each of the groups, and that's going to be a very common theme that you'll see as we move into recommendations. We also had a customer experience survey that was conducted for existing users. And just to reiterate, I know I've shared this with you all in the past, it's critical for us to ensure we are maintaining the functionality of the system for those who are currently using it and not compromising that experience for the benefit of those that aren't currently riders. So the things that we heard as key takeaways from the existing riders are that most of the respondents really like the idea of additional transit service options, both in expansion geographically, but expansion in service hours, as well as service models or types, and that the majority of the folks that are currently using the system are using it for school and employment. We also had a significant number, again, of those stakeholder interviews, and some of the feedback that we received from them most consistently is a desire to have more density from a residential standpoint in and around downtown Douglasville. So using transit as a mechanism to provide some transit-oriented development opportunities, i.e. less parking lots, more transportation services that promote that type of dense development. Ensuring that seniors are a priority. We heard from so many groups that our seniors have a gap in transportation, not just from their place of residence to the senior care facilities, but also for recreation, healthy living, access to shopping, and entertainment. So that's going to also be a focused user group for us. And we heard that from our key stakeholders, the public, as well as our commission workshop. So that will be an area where you'll also see some significant emphasis and focus. Facilitation of access to jobs and a special focus on attention of that reverse commute, making sure that we're not only providing great transportation options and connectivity for those trying to leave Douglas County for employment, but the reverse is true also. There's opportunities for employment in the county, and we have a significant number of folks coming in from outside the county for employment, and making sure that there's a reflection on those opportunities as well. And then creating opportunities for the youth to make sure that they have great access to jobs, great access to school, but also after school programs. So not just looking at it through that narrowed lens of the bare minimum for the youth, but expanding their opportunities for transportation. We did prepare some summary documents, and we will have these in your inbox. I know Director Rana, you have copies of these, and our commissioners have copies of these, but we want to make sure the Transportation Committee has them as well. These one-page documents, front and back, summarize the results of the public and stakeholder involvement process, as well as the existing conditions and operational analysis. So it gives you a quick snapshot of the key findings that we're going to be using to help drive that solution-based process, as well as preparing those scenarios. So these are little graphics that demonstrate what will be shown on those 2 pagers, and we'll make sure that you have a digital copy. If you need printed copies, please let us know. We did also have a really great workshop with our commissioners to make sure that we fully understood leadership goals and objectives. And so we use this as part of that layer cake to say, here's what the public said. Here's what the stakeholders said. Here's what the technical data is showing us. What are our primary goals and objectives when we begin prioritizing solutions to these? And so in asking those questions, we received some really fantastic feedback from our leadership to say, we categorize success in this way. And our number one target that demonstrates success is improvements in connectivity, connecting people to the places they need to go and connecting places together. So you'll see that as a primary target for us as we demonstrate the success of our scenarios. Second place is economic impact, and there was a lot of discussion surrounding economic impact, both for improvement or accessibility to employment opportunities, but also the growth of the economic environment within Douglas County, i.e. Development that follows transportation investment. So making sure that we're quantifying that as we go through our recommendation process. And then we did have a tie in third place for equity and health, which I really love, because that means I get to sneak a fourth one into my top three. So equity and health, equitable access to transportation, and then healthy living, healthy lifestyles, and reducing carbon reduction is going to be really an important focus here. So our next steps will be presenting the existing conditions and operational analysis in greater detail in your next meeting. We focused on public and stakeholder involvement in this one. You'll get a deeper dive of that operational analysis and existing conditions analysis in your next meeting. We will complete service scenario development and the financial analysis. We expect to have that completed early October. And then we'll be rolling those presentations out to our stakeholders committee, our technical subcommittee, you all as the transportation committee, and then ultimately that final product will be presented to the commission at the end of this calendar year. So the next several months will be very active and you'll see a lot from us. We'll be working hard in the background to prepare all of those technical reports and documents. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have in the meantime.
Thank you so much for that, Rachel.
Yes,
That was great. So I've got I'll take them in reverse.
Okay.
Timeline.
Yes, sir.
Schedule. I believe, and we can, Director Ron, let's make sure we confirm this. Normally we have 2 meetings in December for adoption of everything from our budget, our policies, etc. When you say end of year, last time the board may assemble may be the first week of December. Make sure you line up your calendar with ours to ensure that we're on the same page. We changed it this year, so I just want to make sure it's not assumed that we've got the 3rd week of the month.
Thank you for that. Yes, sir. We actually spoke to Director Robertson yesterday and your Assistant Director Wright about that. Make sure our timelines align perfectly. So we'll be narrowing down that specific date in October. So y'all will know well in advance and have your materials in advance of that meeting. But thank you for the reminder.
Absolutely. Committee before the full board of commissioners. Got to see what you're going to present, but ultimately, yes, you got it. All right, that was an easy one. Just FYI. But you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned obviously the seniors and the feedback you got. The youth was something that I knew was important because that generation is coming. And so if you're going to recalibrate a system, if you're going to expand it, if you're going to retrofit it, you're going to retool it. That's the next generation that's really going to, benefit from it. From an adoption perspective, we got the seniors, we got them on point, got it, heard you. But you've got 2-3 generations in here that we need to be sensitive to. So I'm glad that you reached the youth and got their feedback regarding this. So duly noted on that. The other thing that I heard you say was about what I would call the regionalism effect, right? Both us going outside the county to the Atlanta Metro and coming back, vis-a-vis the airport or downtown, got it. But in reverse, and back to the conversation like DBEs, et cetera, is that while we have jobs here, we want to keep it here. Everybody's not qualified to fulfill the need of those companies. So they have to go outside of us to pull in people, just like we have to go outside ourselves for contractors. So likewise, I'm glad to hear that there's a reverse. There's an acknowledgement that it has to go both ways. It's not exclusive. It's in and out, and I appreciate that. We recognize that we're already connected to, I'm going to say the Cobb's, what is it called, link?
Cobb Link.
Cobb Link, which is important, but To that point, are we doing this process where you have a chance is there looking at what our partners in Fulton or Cobb or Carroll and Paulding are doing, so that there's some type of degree of alignment, or like, hey, you guys may want to consider these as opportunities. I get, as you retrofit, how will you reconcile that? In other words, how do you help us align the regionalism? Or do you have any visibility? You may not. That may not be the scope of this, but that would be important to me to say, okay, you give me a report. So how does the relationship over to Cobb or Fulton or Carroll? Can you talk
Absolutely. Yes, sir. So we have direct contact with each of the transit providers and have been in close contact with both the operators as well as their administration to understand what's currently operating today, where there could be improvements in those existing links, but then also looking to their future transportation plans, which we've already pulled into our process. And all of our maps, everything we create includes their existing service areas and their future expansions, so that we can see and plan for where we see opportunity where they currently have expansion plans or existing service, but also so that we can drive the process if there is benefit that comes from our planning process that they may not see yet. I.e., if we're going to bring an expansion outside of the county and they don't have a connection there, that would be a logical discussion to have with them to say, if we're going to come into your service area, we need to be discussing how that connects to your system, because we don't want to create islands of service. So those conversations are occurring on your behalf. And we do have the benefit of your partner being the ATL as the umbrella organization through which this contract flows. And the ATL is responsible for all transportation linkages within the metro area. We are going a step beyond that and looking outside of the metropolitan area and looking to your rural partners and neighbors as well, because we see a significant flow of travel for employment coming into your county from outside the metro region. So making sure that we're not just looking to the Cobbs and Fultons, but also looking to the Carroll counties to make sure that we have those opportunities for connectivity there as well. So we are not planning in a silo, and we're making sure that we're touching each of those opportunities, and we'll drive the process from a two-prong approach to make sure that we are connecting where there's logical plan connections, but driving that process if we see an opportunity.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and again, to your point, and I don't know who represents the ATL for our, so we're the 8th district of the ATL, so that's what, South Cobb, City of South Fulton, and all of Douglas. And you're right, that is a proper forum and platform to ensure alignment. And I'm glad to hear that you have access. So you hear my heart, like, you got this. You've got this lined up for us. So I won't have to go beyond that. And I won't belabor the moment. You've answered, because I know you're going to come with much more deeper dive as we get into this. I want to just thank you for your update, because I've got to keep this going. But before I pause, any of my committee members, any questions? And has the chairman arrived yet, guys, or he's not here?
We don't have Mr. Chairman yet, but I would like to recognize District 4 Commissioner Mark Alvarez and our Planning and Zoning Manager, Allison Duncan, who are in attendance.
All right, Allison, good to see you. Glad you could be here. Commissioner, any comments, sir? You can weigh in my committee. What do you want to hear? Any questions?
No, sir. It's a great presentation. It was well done.
Very good. All right. Thank you for being here. All right, Rachel, thank you so much. And we'll see you next month when you come before us, okay?
Thank you, sir.
All right, Deputy Director Wright, thank you so much. Is there anything else in your group for transportation on Director Roberts? Are you good?
We're good. That concludes us. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you. Director Rana, back to you. Let's keep it moving.
Thank you, sir. And minor correction before we move forward, the threshold for DBE gross revenue is $30 million. It is not $100 million.
30 million in revenue, gross revenue?
Gross revenue.
Gross revenue. Yeah?
Yes, sir.
And all right. Okay. Again, back to the bonding. What is the threshold for bonding? I get that's revenue threshold. The bonding is what times the amount of the contract. How does that work for the public?
Sir, in our contracts for DOT contracts, there's a 5% bid bond that they have to submit, and then there's 100% of performance bond that they have to submit, and then there's 110% of labor and material bond that they have to submit. Now, as these bonds are submitted, that's what we start off on. With every monthly invoice, we release that specific amount of bond out of their liability so they can go and pursue more work because they're bonded based off of their liquidity and their prior work history. So that's our bonding practice.
All right, so then the last question. So you're in a subdivision and it's uneven. Even though I can tell it's uneven. It's sort of like, it's inferior, but they're gone. How does the bond work in that place to sort of get them to fill that work? How does it work? Either we don't give them the money back and do it ourselves, or what is the, the simple way?
Yes, sir. And that's exactly what we're going through as we speak. So if a subdivision comes in and they default, like many of the subdivisions that did in 08 recession, what we do is we pull their bond, and basically we have two options. One, we could have that work contracted out, or we could do it in-house. So one of the subdivisions that we're working out in, I believe, District 3, off of Big A Road, they defaulted in 2010. We pulled their bond, and we've used that money to pave those roads in-house. And so our DOT maintenance crew is actually working on resurfacing those roads. So we certainly have the option to pull the bonds, and then what we do with that money is our call.
Got you. Thank you for that. Thank you very much. All right, that satisfies that topic. All right, keep us going.
Yes, sir. Next, on the agenda, we have public works updates, and for that, we have Director Heath Coward.
Director Coward, come on up. You got the floor, sir.
Yes, sir. Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So our updates are pretty quick today. We've got the paving for District 4 is complete. That is in-house paving. That's Governor's Ridge. District 3, I believe, is the Woodlands. It's complete. And then as we monitor Yellowstone, they've started their mowing, trimming, litter pickup. They're out there. They're in their third cycle. And they're in the vicinity of Liberty Church Road and Ephesus Church. Liberty Road and Ephesus Church, excuse me. And then Brightview Landscape in the I-20, their contract is just restarted, I believe. So it kicks off tomorrow and on Wednesday, and they just start their weekly rotation the same way they've done it this last year. So that would complete. That just shows that 2002 to 23 contract or job is complete, and now we're starting a new contract that was awarded recently by the Board of Commissioners. Let's see what else we have.
Before you change that, let's do that a real quick second. So from your perspective, it's been hot. We've got more mowing cycles, etc. How is our topography? How is our terrain working? I mean, is it going up like weeds with this rain? How are they maintaining it? Are we doing enough? Not enough? What do you see? I need to hear.
I think it's sufficient. I mean, in usually the high heat without the rain, it's gonna slow that grass down in August. We've got rain definitely, but it's we also picked up more cycles, so I think we nailed it. There's always be a couple areas that may be growing faster than others, but as far as the complaints and that kind of thing coming in, it's a fraction of what it was last year. So everybody seems to be happy.
Okay.
So I think we got it good like this, and my recommendation to keep rolling on with it next year as well.
So you got the mowing, but also who handles the pickup and the litter? Is this the same contract, or they separate contracts? Like they go hand in hand. You don't need to run over. How does that work now? How did you configure it this year?
Yellowstone has the same people. They have the mowing, the trimming, and litter pickup as well. If we need it, we have in-house crews that can do litter pickup. Basically on a needs be or a complaint basis, we can get out there and look. But so far they're doing very well. Everybody seems to be happy with the product.
Okay. Just as a side, you mentioned sort of complaints. Sometimes it's just comments from citizens to you and Director Rana. I received one going down. We're on Thornton Road. We're going south toward the airport. When you get on the right lane going to the I-20 Cloverleaf to go into Atlanta. They're saying that the signs for I-20 and all that is blocked by overgrowth and so forth. You can't see anything. Whose responsibility is that? Can we go out there and clean that up for confusion, or do we have to go to GDOT to take care of stuff like that? Because I've heard it for about a month from a couple of people.
I'd say GDOT, but Deputy Rana would probably know more than me on that.
Yes, sir. On the interchange, especially those jug handles and all the ramps, that's within GDOT's right of way, and that's their responsibility. The only interchanges that we're maintaining is the 3 or the 4 under Brightview contract that we've added landscapes to. So heading to Atlanta on that I-20, I believe that would be what interchange would that be, Director Carver? Do you know?
That's Thornton on I-20.
Thornton on I-20. I think that would fall under ours, but that's just within the interchange. So if those are the bushes that are hanging, I think that would be covered under Brightview. But
can y'all take a look at that?
Yes.
Please take administratively. Can y'all go look at that and just for the citizens' sake, because they don't understand jurisdiction differences.
Yep.
Like they call me, and Commissioner Alvarez, my job is to help navigate them through the bureaucracy, whether it's at federal, state, or local level. Can y'all take care of that for us, please?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And just one point I would like to make on that is we've had those complaints come into about mowing and bushes that are encroaching into the right of way. The issue with that is we strategically added the side posts to our Brightview contract, and we're maintaining the ground I think at optimal levels as we speak. The county is looking refreshed, and the grass and mowing has been done per the needs. The bushes that are hanging on the right of way, we actually don't have that contracted out, and we do that in-house. We're down 11 positions, and we have 2 boom mowers that support that practice. However, with the peak season that we're in, we do have a backlog that we're working through, but that's due to the cost constraints. That is a practice that's in-house, and with our limited staff, we're trying to cover that, but that is a backlog that we're trying to address for the current month and possibly into the next month also.
All right, so to that point, thank you for that. I think, and Director Coward, Commissioner Alvarez is still out there. This is something that we've experienced over time. We've always been committed to transportation. This is probably with our 3rd Director of Transportation. And it's something that, okay, we give you equipment. You can contract it outside, or you can keep it in-house. Right? The in-house, well, there could be more efficiencies. We gave them great equipment, like whatever you need. The issue is manpower. He's down 11 positions. So while I know there's an intent to perhaps say we could do it ourselves, it's about, and you've heard this common theme, attracting and retaining people to actually do the work. So I just wanted to put that on there. Director Alvarez, you got any comments on that topic?
No, I mean, it seems to be across the board in many of our departments. But I will say I was quite impressed. I had a citizen call me right there at Mason Creek and Highway 5 that had when you come around the corner coming up to approaching light, the tree limbs were hanging down and you could no longer see the red light until you were right up on it. And sent that to Director Rana, and that team got that taken care of really fast. I was really thrilled when I called the constituent back to let them know that was taken care of. They were quite shocked that something actually moved that quickly. I told them, I said, don't always think that it's always going to be that way, but we got this addressed for you because it was a safety issue. It was a huge safety issue. And so no, kudos to the team for taking care of that.
Well, there it is. Thank you for that, Commissioner Alvarez. So y'all keep it going then.
Pass it on down.
Yes. All right, Director Carl, go ahead and finish out your topic, or unless you're done.
That's pretty much it. If you have any questions, sir, I can tell you as far as our KPIs, the total in-house mileage we paved is right at a mile. We've also fixed 1,842 potholes so far this year. And we're at about 865 miles of litter pickup and mowing that's been completed, contracted out. So
very good.
We've been very busy, and I think that shows with the decrease in complaints.
Very good. We appreciate your commitment. And again, the numbers don't lie. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Director Rana, keep us going.
Yes, sir. And just before we move on from Public Works, I would like to make that clarification that the Thornton Road at I-20, the bushes hanging into the right of way, that would be GDOT's responsibility. And after this meeting, we'll convey that complaint and make sure it's addressed.
Thank you so much. No problem.
Yes, sir. All right. So next item is Department of Transportation updates. And for that, we have our Planning and Zoning Manager, Allison, with us. And she has PATH Foundation to do an introductory presentation for this committee. Allison, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Oh boy,
All
welcome,
right.
Allison. Greetings,
Hey, sir.
greetings.
How's everybody
Oh.
doing today?
Yes. Very
This has
good. You
This
got
has
the
been
floor.
some great information so far. Thank you for the opportunity to join your meeting today. I hope we can kind of continue the great information that we're sharing by introducing you to the PATH Foundation. This is an organization that some of you may be familiar with. This may be kind of a first time introduction to others, but by way of kind of leading into this, I want to just say that what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes is going to really focus on our bike ped network here in Douglas County. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge all of the great work that we've done in the last year or so, starting with our GIS department. So Ed Dean and his team have gone out in the field, and they basically have created a map of all of our sidewalks, all of our trails. We know where all of our bike ped infrastructure is in Douglas County, and that's huge. That is such a benefit for us as we go forward and we start to consider how we need to expand our bike ped opportunities in the county. I'd also like to give a shout out to my colleague Carla Pashedley in transportation. She participates in the bike ped committee that we have jointly with City of Douglasville and Villa Rica. And so she's been a fantastic advocate on the transportation side of the house for our trail capacity. And then finally, just want to acknowledge that the Board of Commissioners gave us the resources in our recent comprehensive plan update to work with Carlos Perez, who is a well-noted green space and trails designer. And so for the first time, we actually have lines on a map that show, countywide that comprehensive trail vision. So the presentation that I wanted to bring to y'all today was to reintroduce you to the PATH Foundation. PATH did the original 2004 study that was part of the Chattahoochee Greenway Trail. And again, want to really acknowledge Director Rana for all the work he's done since he's been here and helping to move that project along. That trail first got started with a portion of a $2 million federal earmark that was given to the 4 counties to help to implement that. And so far as I know, Douglas County is the only jurisdiction that actually used those resources for the purposes that were stated. Since that time, we've been trying to continue building that trail with a combination of local and federal funds. And quite frankly, that takes a minute, right? I'm not telling y'all anything you don't know, that you're using a very similar process to build a trail that you would also use to build a highway, right? So it's taken a minute. I think it's been the better part of 14 years, but kudos to Director Rana for getting that moving again. But with that in mind, I appreciate the opportunity to introduce Eric Ganther with the PATH Foundation. PATH has built a number of trails throughout Metro Atlanta. So I'm going to turn it over to him to talk to you for the next 10 minutes or so about possibilities for public-private partnerships and how that's worked in other jurisdictions. So unless you have any questions for me right now, I can hand it off to Eric.
No, please, you have the floor, Eric. Welcome to Douglas County, and we welcome you to the floor.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the commissioners and to county staff for inviting me today to speak about trails and Douglas County. If I could share my screen, that would be great.
You should be able to now.
Thank you very much. So this is a little presentation. This is an introduction to the PATH Foundation, give you a sense of who we are and what we do, and then talk a little bit about how we work, and then open the floor for some questions. So the PATH Foundation, we are in our 32nd year as a nonprofit. And all the PATH Foundation does is build trails. That's all we've done for 32 years. We've planned multi-use trail systems in more than 30 communities throughout the Southeast, primarily in Georgia. We've built over 320 miles of multi-use bicycle pedestrian facilities. And we've raised...
Did we lose him?
I think so. I think it should be reconnecting. There he is. Eric, we lost you for a minute.
I apologize. I'm going to turn off my video because our office is in a basement. And so I'll turn off my video and we just focus on the screen here.
We were just at the third bullet is where you cut out.
Right. Okay. So we have raised $85 million in philanthropic community donations to match $180 million in public funding, either through grants or SPLOST funding, hotel tax, etc. So this is the list of trail benefits, and I would guess that a number of you have been on different trails in the Atlanta region. So the Silver Comet is an example that isn't terribly far from you all, just to the north. It is one of our earlier trails, one of our accomplishments in the late 90s and early 2000s. But it's important just to kind of reset the discussion around this. I want to make sure that folks understand trail benefits. And I've got a number of slides here that just show these are all trails that we've built and community members on them, and how important trails are in terms of what they bring in terms of quality of life to your community. So trails are a safe, inviting backdrop for family memories. This is the day-to-day life. This is the quality of life. This is what we work for as government employees and as elected officials. The trails reintroduce us to nature. So this is a key piece as well. If you've been on the Silver Comet Trail or some of the trails that we have in the Southeast metro area, often Arabia Mountain, for example, or the South River Trail, you see how beautiful rural Georgia is. And often in our daily lives, we spend so much time in automobiles, we spend a lot of time at work, we spend time in our homes, and we kind of forget where we're at. And one of the really key factors of the benefits of trails is that it reconnects us to nature and brings that serenity that we, again, often lack in our very harried, busy metropolitan existence. We forget about our rivers, and we forget about our creeks and the beautiful forest lands that are part of North Georgia. And these are important for us. It sounds kind of cliched, but this is really critical. And again, it's easy to forget this, but trails provide us access to the unique and beautiful natural and cultural areas. And this one, I think, is important as we're kind of moving into more practical thoughts here, is that trails can create an emerald necklace that connects your existing parks and increases park acreage around the county in a way that enables people to get between your recreation assets without having to get into a car necessarily. So, and in the process, trails strengthen community identity. So when we think about a Stone Mountain Trail going through Tucker and Clarkston, right through the middle of town, when we think of trails that we've built in Carrollton, Georgia, for example, just to the west of you, if you haven't had an opportunity to go to Carrollton lately, I highly recommend going and checking out the Carrollton Greenbelt. It is about 14-mile loop around the city, and it is absolutely spectacular. And it has really helped Carrollton come together as a community to build the trail and to promote the trail, use the trail, see one another out there. Trails enable a variety of fun physical activity. So in the Transportation Committee, we hear about the sides of the road and we hear about transit, and those of course are critical to the functioning of a contemporary society and a county that is part of a bigger metropolitan area. But they don't really offer the same benefit that a trail does for physical activity and health and well-being. And the fun aspect is something that trails bring for us. It isn't exercise as drudgery, it's exercise as something that you actually look forward to. And in the process, of course, you can bring your friends, your family, you can meet your neighbors. Trails are an important part of that, maintaining our social well-being. Trails bring interaction with friends, new and old. And again, that's the social piece of this. And I want to reiterate that there are a lot of studies that have been done in recent years about how important it is for humans to get physical activity, to be in nature, and to the health and wellness benefits that come from that. And they're not just physical, but they're also social. And a trail is an opportunity to bring people together for a walking club, for example, or a bicycling group, or an excuse to come together and exercise together. They also, of course, provide and enable environmentally friendly ways of getting to work and to school, or other places. And so I really enjoyed listening to our transportation partner talk about the transit master plan, and the transit planning, which I used to do, is so good at that outreach to the community, and then identifying destinations. Where do people want to go? Who wants to go there? What do the seniors need? What do the youth need? And I would say there's really a similar process that needs to happen for trails. Maybe not quite as involved, and not not quite as involved. But we end up with the same. We're dealing with some of the same issues. We're looking at the connectivity. We're looking at economic impact. We're looking at equity and health. We're looking at attraction and retention. Those last four concepts were all things that I've heard today, and they all have, and trails can impact all of those in a very positive manner, especially that last piece, attraction and retention of employees, of residents, of investment. Trails reclaim public rights of way for non-motorist experiences. And this may be less of an issue in most of Douglas County, but there might be places in Douglas County where there's a lot of roadway, there's a lot of room for motorists, but there really isn't necessarily room for people to walk or bike safely. We always think, would you send your kid out to this space? Would you allow your grandparent to go walk along this space or to ride a bicycle? And if the answer is no, well, then we have some work to do. So economic impact, this is important for a lot of our partners. And I just wanted to highlight the Beltline. I'm sure many of you have either been on the Beltline, you've certainly heard of the Beltline. It is a really big deal in Atlanta, and it's on track to generate over $10 billion of economic impact, which is simply staggering compared to what people thought it could do once upon a time. So when you're thinking about your Riverlands Trail, I wouldn't necessarily say that's going to generate $10 billion worth of economic impact, but it might generate a whole lot more than you've been thinking. And let's just keep in mind that there are these opportunities. And why? Because people demand this kind of stuff. They go to it in droves. The Beltline gets so crowded on some weekends that you're like, oh, we need another one. We need more. And in fact, the city of Atlanta is working with us on how do we extend a trail network from the Beltline into the neighborhoods. It generates substantial residential and commercial development, again, which you can see all around the Beltline. The Ponce City Market area has some of the best looking architecture in North Georgia from a contemporary standpoint. And then, of course, jobs. So a lot of jobs have been generated by the Beltline, both construction jobs. We have 60,000, more than 60,000 one-year construction jobs. And then we're on track to generate over 50,000 permanent jobs as a result of this development. So this is really a key piece of this. Trails are accessible to everybody. And so that it cuts across the society in the same way that I would say transit does. with maybe even a broader reach from economic classes that we have, that we want to set this up in a way that everybody can benefit from this. And that's really what the PATH Foundation is dedicated to. So that's my kind of quick pitch for the PATH Foundation. And I wanted just to open the floor to you all to see if you have some questions about what it is that we do or how it is that we work, or what we might be able to do moving forward to partner with you. We've shared a concept for a trail master plan, a trail partnership agreement with Allison and the Department of Transportation group. And so, you know, if folks have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Very, very good. You're very good at that. You spoke out the overflow of your heart on that, and I heard every word. Have you ever met Commissioner Mike Mulcair?
I have not.
All right, so maybe about 8-9 years ago, he was a fellow commissioner out of District 3, and he's our trail guy. You know, he's all things conservation. And so he turned over the chair of transportation to me and encouraging him. But with that, I made a promise to ensure that, you know, trail systems were important in Douglas County. And I said, no, I get it. And I agree with him from the perspective of it helps enhance our character areas. Key thing you said from a leadership perspective, you're going to step back and you're going to design a city, a county, a state. It's how you see the whole picture. It all aligns. And you're right, the psychology is that we go to work and we're grinding it out. And before you know it, we got an asphalt jungle. Because we became insensitive to the fact that there's other parts of life that don't let that get away from you. And I try to encourage my fellow commissioner, Commissioner Alvarez, who's part of the future, like, okay, now, hope you're paying attention to this now. You got to balance it. Right? You got to balance what we allow into the county and how you shape it. And there are different parts and different things that people want to do. And it's not a huge cost, unlike transportation in and of itself. It's something that's supplemental, but it gives you a much higher yield and an easier maintenance over time. And to your point, it's to benefit the people. They want to go there and just sort of relieve themselves versus getting in that heat and that driving. It connects nature. So there is something to the health of the county that these trails can bring the county. So Commissioner Alvarez, just hear this. I know it will take you, you'll consider what you're listening to, but this is something I think is important. So Allison, help bridge the gap. We've got the trail system from Boundary Waters on down. We've got the conservation trail. We've got pockets. Help bridge what he brings to the table, which I know what they do, to where we are so that we can have a better conversation. So how does this, how will he value us? How can he help us accomplish what we've already laid out in sort of pseudo plans?
Sure thing. So staff wanted to bring this to you today for consideration because if you look at the strategic plan, if you look at the comprehensive transportation plan, and now if you look at the comprehensive plan update, through all of that engagement that we've done with the community and all of those, we have heard, you know, building trails is a consistent priority of the community. We've heard them say, please connect kind of some of our major community nodes, like our parks, in ways that we don't have to get into a car and to take a car everywhere for that. And so if this is a topic that it is the will of this committee or the board for us to continue to explore, we can kind of pick up the presentation from here and work with PATH Foundation to refine a scope of what that would look like particularly. We would like to make sure that we give consideration to possibly working with the current Bike PED committee, which has some amazing citizen volunteers that are part of that, either seeing how we could repurpose that to help drive a steering committee in Douglas County, an unincorporated Douglas County for this work, or possibly kind of create a separate citizens committee, because we want to make sure that we're continuing the voice of the citizens, right, in all of this. They've said, hey, trails are a priority to us. Now, if we were to move forward in actual trail building, we want to make sure that we are reflecting their priorities and they have a seat at the table. So coming out of the comprehensive plan update, we have 2 trail segments that we think are pretty solid to continue to move forward. Director Rana and his team, I believe, are going to continue to work on the Chattahoochee Greenway Trail because we're so far down the path with the federal funds for that project. But there's 2 potential trail connections that we think we could also move forward on fairly quickly, working with PATH as a public-private partnership, which is a little bit of a different model. So admittedly today, we don't have those fine details exactly sorted out, but we wanted to bring this to you to see if you would like us to sort out those details and then bring it forward for your consideration.
No, I appreciate that. And to your point, citizen input is always important to advocate their interests. I have people, my citizen, I'm on, Eric, I'm what's considered the eastern role. So I'm sort of, the intersection point between Cobb and Fulton. My fellow commissioners on the, the Carroll Paulding side of the county. And so one of the things I constantly hear though is that, okay, Commissioner Robinson, I get some sidewalks. I get some street lights. I get some bike lanes. And they like it. So we're trying to balance that urban, that rural. There's a balancing act between the two. We don't want to mow this thing over. We really don't. It's like, but how do I balance my economic development? And we get to shape it. Don't let it just occur through osmosis. It's like, okay, now let's be intentional about how we do this. Let's be intentional what we allow to come in through planning and through zoning. So duly noted on that. I mean, I'm open to it. Allison, I don't think I have enough from a voting membership at this committee at today. This is just supposed to be conversation because I don't have a full quorum. But Commissioner Alcaraz, what do you hear so far? I really want to hear what he just heard and his thoughts.
Well, I'll be honest. I'm really glad I jumped on this this meeting today because I'm again, yet another great presentation. I'm a huge proponent of getting outdoors. I have visited the Greenbelt in Carrollton quite a few times. My oldest son and his girlfriend go out there and ride it very frequently. It's a nice area to be out. And on the weekends, you're absolutely correct. On the weekends, there are so many people in that Carrollton, I'm sure from all different areas around the Carrollton area. They go to that Greenway and Greenbelt and ride their bikes and just get outdoors and walk their dogs. We have a tremendous amount of still beautiful woodlands or areas, nature areas, and we got beautiful creeks and rivers. I would love to see some ideas about making some bike lanes or paths that you could take to see some of the beauty that we still have in Douglas County. So yeah, I'm excited about this, and I would like to see, or can't wait to see for you guys to have enough to vote on this to start looking into this and see where this some of these ideas will take us.
That's so wonderful to hear, commissioners. Thank you. I want to just say you have an opportunity now, and during your 10 years as commissioners, Douglas County will continue to grow and will continue to develop. And over time, these opportunities start to close off. And so you really want to take advantage of the time that you have while there are still beautiful places in the county. There will always be beautiful places in the county, but accessing them with a greenway trail is such a better experience than on a bike lane next to a busy highway. And so even if it's a buffered bike lane, if there's some little plastic sticks along there, it's not a place where you would really, seek to spend your weekend time. Whereas those greenways, those are magical. And so, you have this opportunity at this point in time for Douglas County to really pull as much of this stuff as we can together so that in future generations, people will look back and they will say, thanks so much to Commissioner Robinson and Alcaraz for the work that they did back in the 2020s, because now look at this wonderful trail network that Douglas County has that is unique, really in much of metropolitan America. So yes, please, let's see what we can do.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the exhortation and the persuasion. You're good, but the information as a baseline. No, we're already in play. And really, you've got our youngest commissioner, our most tenured, and this is going to be. He and I are going. I've got a window of time. I've got 1 year and 4 months. I know what it means about windows of time. You got to go now, and you got to seize and see the moment. So I do get it. You really. So how this works? I got to keep this committee moving. Without objection to the committee, since we cannot vote, through concurrence and with the blessing of my fellow commissioner, Allison, you guys can go straight ahead to the full board of commissioners, work on a plan for us to say yes or no to. Give us something to look at. As Commissioner Alcaraz, give us options, and let's keep this moving.
Sure thing, will do. We've shared this presentation with Director Rana, so he can share it with the committee as well as with the full board. And then I will continue to work with Director Rana and his team and the Path Foundation to refine what a specific scope of work could potentially look like. And so we can bring that back to this committee, or we can advance it to the full board as y'all see fit. But we will get to work on refining that and moving it forward. So we really appreciate your support and your interest in this topic.
To that point, just as a pause, Commissioner Alcaraz,
Yes.
since you have a harpist, would you like to be the chair of the subcommittee on this for the trails?
Absolutely.
Your direct input.
Yes. Absolutely.
All right, consider it done. All right.
All right.
Allison?
We have our orders. Thank you. We really appreciate your time. And thank you, Eric. I appreciate your presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Alcaraz.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Director Alcaraz. Keep us going, sir. We gotta keep going. We gotta get out of here. I gotta go to dinner. I gotta come back up here. Come on.
Yes, sir. Next item is an update on our recently led project, which was State Road 92 at Lake Monroe. This was an intersection improvement project where our intention was to evaluate a signal need there at this intersection. We've observed an increasing number of crashes on this intersection, and we have our consultants with us today to present their findings, or I would say initial findings, with their traffic engineering report. We have Matt Flynn from Pawn & Company. Matt, are you there with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Perfect.
So Matt is going to walk us through with his findings, starting off with the existing conditions and what his team has been up to, and after that we'll take some questions. So Matt, over to you.
All right, perfect. Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Welcome, Matt. You have the floor. Go right ahead.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. Okay. So we will be discussing a high-level summary overview of the traffic engineering study for the intersection State Route 92 at Lake Monroe Road. Brief overview of what we'll be discussing today will be a study overview, some assumptions, current existing conditions at the study intersection, the traffic signal warrant analysis that was performed, along with the GDOT intersection control evaluation, or ICE. And then we will end on capacity analyses that were performed, recommendations, and proposed next steps for this project. Okay, let me minimize that, sorry. Okay, so this project, as we walk through this presentation, you'll see our recommendations are focused on reducing the crash risk at this study intersection and improving overall traffic operations. Our considerations at this location included a review of historical crash data, as well as a review of existing and the development of future traffic volumes at this intersection, the intersection control evaluation process, and capacity analyses, or level of service, which we will speak to in a later slide. Okay, the existing geometry at this intersection, State Route 92 is a 4-lane divided corridor. Throughout this presentation, we've assumed State Route 92 will have a north-south orientation just for the ease of conversation, whereas the minor street, Lake Monroe Road, will have an east-west orientation. And we have some details regarding existing turn lanes along the major street with a speed limit of 45 miles an hour, and a shared left-right turn lane along the minor street with a posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour. So just trying to get everybody oriented really quickly before we dive in here. So as part of this exercise, we have gone through and assumed the GDOT PVP process in order to develop existing and future traffic flow diagrams. So as you can see here are some screenshots of the volumes that were developed, existing daily traffic on your left, and your peak hour traffic volumes on the right. At the top right of my screen, you can see a summary of our findings regarding level of service capacity analyses. So in the morning, peak hour, the intersection is currently operating at level service F. and in the afternoon peak hour at a level of service D. Just for a quick FYI, industry standards level service D is considered to be more or less acceptable, with level service E and F being considered subpar or failing. Okay, moving on to our historical crash data review. So from the years 2017 to 2021, we pulled historical crash data using GDOT's new metric system. We have pulled 69 crashes at this location. 36% of those included injury crashes, and with the most frequent manner of collision being a left turn or a left angle crash, making up just over 50% of the overall crashes recorded during this study period, which you can see right here where my cursor is. So 35 total left angle crashes out of the 69. Diving in a little further to the left angle crashes, breaking that down, another layer of the onion, if you will. 19 of those crashes involved 8 injury crashes, and they were associated with the eastbound left turn movement. So that would be turning left from Lake Monroe onto State Route 92. And conversely, 17 crashes, with 4 of those being injury crashes, resulted from the northbound left movement, which would be from State Route 92 turning left onto Lake Monroe Road. So as part of this exercise, we did evaluate and run a traffic signal warrant analysis for this location. We reviewed 3 warrants based on the industry standard MUTCD guidance, and in concurrence with GDOT standards as well. So warrant 1 is the 8-hour vehicular volume warrant. Warrant 2 is the 4-hour vehicular volume warrant, and warrant 3 is the peak hour vehicular volume warrant. This table below shows warrant by warrant the results for the intersection. And as you can see, we are not meeting the minimum required hours for that volume threshold in order to warrant a traffic signal based on existing conditions per the MUTCD and GDOT guidance. And so taking those results and recognizing that a traffic signal may not be the most appropriate solution at this intersection, we did continue our evaluation using GDOT's intersection control evaluation. These were the 4 alternatives that were further evaluated, including a reduced conflict U-turn, or an R-cut, as it's commonly referred to. Another option was converting this intersection to a right-in, right-out operation. The third one would be a high T intersection configuration. And the fourth alternative that was considered would be adding an eastbound left turn lane along Lake Monroe Road. The ICE evaluation is based on a number of elements, including the capacity analysis, the delay of the proposed intersection configuration, the crash reductions associated with that, you can think of it as a safety factor, and also the overall cost estimate for the alternative. And so the ICE evaluation is really a cost to benefit ratio. And so this table here at the bottom is showing the ranking per GDOT's intersection control evaluation results, ranking the R-cut configuration as the preferred alternative. And so taking the results of that ICE analysis, we then compared that to the forecasted open year 2028 peak hour volumes and the design year 2048 peak hour volumes. And we have some level of service results to show. So in the open year 2028, level of service improves from failing to level service D. And in the afternoon, the peak hour improves to level service C. And then as you can see in design year, 20-year horizon from when this R-cut would be open to the public and traffic moving through it. The AM peak hour does worsen to a level service F, and the PM peak hour results stay the same as the open year at level service C. One thing I would like to point out or call your attention to is the 2048 design year level of service F at my cursor here. While we are still showing a delay that is technically substandard, from where conditions started and the delay that we're seeing today, there is note to be made that there's significant delay reduction with this preferred alternative R-cut. And so while it's still showing a level of service F, it's only during the morning peak hour, and we are still seeing significant delay benefits with this configuration installed. So our overall recommendations per this process and outlined in greater detail in our traffic engineering report is an R-cut configuration, which would eliminate the side street left turn, forcing all vehicles to turn right from Lake Monroe onto State Route 92, and still allowing the major street left turn and or U-turn movements along State Route 92. Another thing to point out in this configuration and some of the cost saving benefits of this is that the adjacent intersection already does have the infrastructure in place to accommodate for the diverted trips that would be making the left today that are now being forced to make a right and make a U-turn. And so the delay benefits are improved, as well as overall safety and reduce conflict points with this intersection configuration. And so with that, recommendations and next steps, we are recommending to move forward if this committee concurs with our findings of the R-cut configuration, to move into conceptual design and cost estimates for this project. I blew through that very quickly because I know we are over time. And so if there are any questions or comments, or if we need a follow-up meeting to discuss these in greater detail, I'm happy to do so.
No, thank you very much for that. And this is a project that had came up through citizens input. I mean, wow, 65 crashes. And a life is still not warranted over a 4-year period of time. I'm saying
yes, correct.
I'm saying this for the citizens. Because sometimes, I mean, going through this analysis now, that was very technical, and now I got to translate what you just said to the citizens that we met out there with them. There's 2 major communities out there, and they're constantly concerned about that. And there's growth out there. There is new residential density that's coming over there. So I'm like, okay, have they factored that in? That you do have stuff that's on the zoning board that's coming forth that will increase the traffic there coming out of Lake Monroe onto 92.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point, and I will say for the volume development of our future traffic at this intersection, we did assume a fairly aggressive growth rate of 2.5% of an annual growth rate, and 1% from open year 2028 to design year. And so we are indirectly accounting for some of the background growth. However, the signal warrant per MUTCD guidance and also GDOT guidance, the signal warrant is based off of the existing traffic that's out there today. And so there is an argument that can be made where future growth is anticipated. And so perhaps coordinating with GDOT, we may get approval to consider or reevaluate the signal warrant process with future projected volumes. Typically that's frowned upon, but I will say that is a point or topic that we can further coordinate with GDOT on.
No, I understand the weight of the high joker versus the low joker. 92 is theirs, Lake Monroe is ours. I get it. I'm just translating this right now to say, okay, what I'm hearing is you gotta go right, and going around. And again, I recognize you got a light right there by the I-20, you got one right down the street, they can make a U-turn. When they moved into that community, it was much slower, much different time. Now all this stuff is going up around them. Now you got this volume, this density, and I'm just thinking about them 65 crashes. And what I didn't hear you say, well, hopefully there's been injury, but I haven't heard death. But I take that serious. But I recognize that you have to respect the powers to be, that with the rules of the rules. So that being said, duly noted, Director Alvarez. So with that being said, I get it. So is this the course of action you think we should take? Accepting the recommendation here?
Commissioner Robinson.
Options. You gave those 4 options. I need you to translate that for the committee.
Yes, sir. So basically, we started off looking at this intersection for 2 reasons. Usually, it's either one of congestion or safety. On this intersection, we had both. We started off looking for a signal which would have ideally solved both of the problems. What we're hearing is that signal is not warranted, and this being a GDOT right-of-way, they would not approve a signal permit for this intersection. The recommendation that our consultant and Matt just presented shows a limited access, which is not favorable, but it addresses the safety concern to start off with. But then it also addresses part of the congestion, because now you just have one movement, and that's going to take away some of the congestion at that intersection. My recommendation on where we stand today is we can't get a signal, but at least we should address the safety issue with a limited access for the time being. The growth that is happening on 92 is going to get us very close to getting a signal in the next year or 2 time frame, if not sooner. So I would say we'll do as little as possible to enhance that safety, and just be prepared in the background for that signal as soon as it meets that criteria or the warrant. So I do recommend doing the R-cut, but we do have GDOT's concurrence on this approach also, and they're for adding R-cut to this intersection. So yes, I would recommend adopting this recommendation, but only partially, just so we're prepared to do a signal as soon as that's warranted.
Understand you have a condition. On something such as this matter that is directly transportation, I'm going to hold it off on. I want to pass a resolution out of committee to the full board. So on this one, we're going to have to pass and pause, not pass, but pause 1 month until our next meeting. Is there a time frame for this? Do we have an expiration date on when we move on this, Director Rana? Can we wait until our next meeting, or is this some type of pending application that was put in play, some exposure to money that we've already put down? Can you talk to us about that?
No, sir. And in fact, if we were to adopt the recommendation, I think there's no more next steps involved. And as far as the cost is concerned, we can start having conversation with GDOT that they may potentially fund the construction of it, because this has been reached, or this is their preferred approach also. So there is no time limit that we're currently following, and we can certainly wait till the next meeting to have a formal action on this.
Thank you so much. What would be the total cost of this if we were doing it? I mean, what is the cost relatively? What does it take to put in an intersection? And what does it take to put in a light versus this solution?
So if we would have had a signal for this, it would have costed us anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000, roughly speaking, for a signal at this intersection. Now, if we're doing a limited access right in, right out, creating an R-cut, we could do that, for, I would say, anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000, depending on to what extent we want to go to. And like I said, that $20,000 investment would be in term, and then once we meet the criteria for the signal, we'll probably bring that into the picture.
All right, so it's no more than $50,000 is what I'm hearing. Is that what I'm hearing?
If we were to do an R-cut, I think we can do that for $30,000.
But I'm thinking about threshold decision making. So is this something we could have absorbed ourselves? But they're going to have to do it, not us. So at the end of the day, they're doing this. So it's their time. I want to go to the full board. Let's wait to our next meeting.
Okay.
On that respectfully. Commissioner Alvarez, you still out there? Can you leave?
Yes.
Commissioner Al, what do you think about this? Intersections, we got safety, we got congestion, and it's a balancing act between the state and us. But are you okay with this on waiting 1 month to come in for the full board? I wanted to come out of committee. Are you okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've turned on that. I've been at that intersection many times, and it is very difficult to make that left-hand turn. Rana, I'm trying to picture it in my mind to make sure I'm right. On the opposite side of Lake Monroe, if you're making that left-hand turn, does that topography, does it not drop off right there? Are we gonna have to do any widening for this arc cut?
No, as far as the intersection goes, I think we have wide enough sight distance or sight line criteria to meet the speed limits that are posted. If we were to implement it, it would merely be putting those concrete islands in and just having those traffic operations oriented that way. So we wouldn't have to do any additional widening on the main line.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
No, I agree. That is a very dangerous or hard to turn out of a left-hand turn intersection.
Right. So example, sometimes there's general maintenance and sometimes, safety is always important. And, that many crashes right there. And I hear the pain of my citizens, but it's a process. I've got to take this back to my citizens independent of being chair, but this is out of my district. But I think you get it. And I thank you for your support if it comes before the full board, okay?
Okay.
All right. All right, gentlemen, you've got Director Ron, I'll let you take care of this. Great presentation, great analytical, great technical. I mean, you laid it out quite well. And you
Thank you,
gave
sir.
us
I appreciate
options, and the rest will be on us, and Director Ron will get back to you. Thank you for being
All
here.
right. Sounds good. Thank you all.
Thank you, Matt. All right.
Director Ron, how many more topics we got?
We have 2 more to go.
All right, keep going.
Yes, sir. So the next item is a very similar intersection project that we recently kicked off, which is Highway 5 at Berea Road.
Okay.
This is in District 4, and this was contracted out to RSNH, and we have our consultants here, Brian Rakes from RSNH, who is the project manager of this project, and I would let him, if you approve, committee chair, would let him present his findings on this intersection too.
Absolutely. I've got to step out the room for a minute. Commissioner Alcaraz, can you take over as chair to oversee this just right now, since it's in your district, please, sir?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. I yield the floor.
Okay, go ahead, Director Rana.
All right, Brian, you're up. Can you share your screen? And you're on mute, Brian.
All right.
There he is.
Good deal. So I've got with me, we're talking about DBs, and I do have a DB with me that's on our team, SEI, Southeastern Engineering. They did all the traffic study and also survey at this intersection. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Chris Maddox that performed the traffic engineering study to go over a few things. And then the last slide will show kind of a little proposed alternative concept that we can discuss further if needed. Chris?
Wonderful, Brian. Yeah, appreciate it. This presentation will be similar to the one that we previously saw, as it is an intersection on a GDOT state route involving one state roadway and one local roadway. We'll be discussing kind of a general overview of the State Route 5 Berea Road traffic engineering report findings. Very similar, like I said, to the past one. Some general information about the intersection, as it is a 3-legged T intersection. It is minor street stop controlled. So what that means is that State Route 5, Bill Arp Road here is the main line at the intersection. It's a 45-mile-per-hour principal arterial, so traffic continues unimpeded north and south along the roadway. While vehicles approaching on Berea Road are controlled by a stop sign and sit at the stop sign and wait for their right-of-way to go. So Berea Road, also a 45-mile-per-hour roadway, classified by GDOT as a local road. As you can see, just 2-lane roadways intersecting one another with a bit of a skew coming in and some properties on the adjacent corners there. Brian, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. A little bit of background information on the intersection. We collected traffic volumes at the site, both 24-hour and peak hour turning movement counts. What you have here in table 1 kind of show the traffic volumes recorded for the 24-hour periods. What it shows is the Berea Road exiting there had about 855 vehicles a day. So I believe that the initial belief was that roadway had more traffic volume on there daily than initially anticipated. But I know it was one thing that in our discussions with the county came up often, that the amount of traffic coming that way compared to you see 8,000 in a direction on State Route 5 during the day wasn't as high as initially perceived, with total number of truck trips being about 2.5% on the roads to 2%. So about your average expected truck traffic, so there's no larger vehicles using the corridor primarily more than anticipated. And then looking at crash data, we had the last 5 years of completed crash data available on the GDOT system and had 11 total collisions throughout a 5-year period, with most of those being pre-COVID, 2017 to 2019, with a few angle crashes for vehicles turning to and from Berea Road, and then rear ends with vehicles on State Route 5 rear-ending one another. So just 4 of those and 6 of those over a 5-year period. So no major discernible thing for safety, just a few occasional collisions at the location. Brian, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. So what we did to decide what could be considered at this intersection was identify feasible alternatives to then continue to the intersection control evaluation for GDOT's ICE requirements for modifications to intersections on state routes. So looking at the volumes, we had our existing condition volumes in 2023. Our open year, as provided by all of the team members, was anticipated to have any improvements done quickly by the end of next year in 2024, and then with a design year of 2044 to make sure that the improvements we were investing our money in were going to last for years into the future. The growth rate for the area was perceived to be 2% annual growth rate on State Route 5. So these volumes were growing by 2% each year going out, and then Berea Road with a smaller anticipated growth rate, as most of the development on that road is in place with a 0.5% annual growth rate. And that was agreed upon too with the department staff to proceed with these projections. One thing I would like to show here, if you're looking at the traffic patterns for Berea Road, really most of your exiting traffic there is taking a left out of the road, with very few making a right out. As likely anyone wishing to travel south down State Route 5 or utilizing other intersections to the south, maybe Mason Creek or other accesses to keep going south as opposed to going north to go south. And then very few turning left from State Route 5 onto Berea Road. So most of your traffic here is using it to go north or cut in to go right down Berea Road instead of traveling further south. So it's kind of very dedicated in its uses for why people are going through there. It's not a general all-purpose round road. So continuing on, we had 2 feasible alternatives after discussion with the team members. Was the existing configuration, essentially a no build, and then adding turn lanes on all approaches. Other alternatives such as a roundabout or R-cut or right in, right out restrictions weren't really considered due to the feasibility of needing downstream and upstream turn lanes for U-turn movements, and the ability to install a roundabout in this location without too much impact and the traffic volumes really not warranting almost a improvement of that scale. So all of these 2 alternatives were analyzed. One with the existing minor street stop control shown up there as the first alternative in the table, and then adding the right turn and left turn lanes on all approaches. The addition of the turn lanes ranked the highest, as it did provide a safety benefit for the intersection, and the ICE score was calculated as a benefit cost for the return on investment you're getting for the cost of the improvement versus the collisions that are there, how it operates, and how it would fit the area. What it shows is that the design year 2027 traffic volumes were analyzed primarily, and the design year volumes, and that when you get out to the future, there is going to be some major delays out here for vehicles trying to exit the Berea Road approach, and then the addition of the turn lanes has some minor impacts on those, but nothing really brings the level of service to an acceptable level for what would be capable of being done at this intersection at this time. Along with that, any additional corrections to the skew that could be made would be recommended that are feasible to help maybe align the intersection better to reduce some of the collisions or improve the sight distances through there. And I think the next slide, Ryan, would have the proposed, kind of a quick overview of what that would look like for the roadway.
Yeah, and what we did here, what you see this white line is where our survey limits and basically the traffic engineering report limits. That's what that's showing. Here we didn't exactly want to go too far into this. As you know, there's a pretty good separation between State Route 5 and Berea Road. And you're talking about extensive walls if you brought this back too far. So we're just talking about, turning it in a little better than it is today, a little less skew, and then adding the left turn and right turn here with separate left turn and right turn here, so that we can at least get that separation with that left turn. That's the heaviest movement onto State Route 5. So this was the proposed alternative. I know we've discussed possibly even a right in, right out here, which would eliminate these left turns here. This left turn is the minor movement. This left turn is heavy. It would keep this heavy right turn. And, whether, what you're thinking about is like, okay, well, how is everybody going to go north on State Route 5? Looking at Jade Road, it does have a better sight distance. You've got a lot of trees here that really need to be cleared in order to have the appropriate sight distance at Berea. But Jade is pretty open. You can see up and down. So it has better sight distance. And basically do similar improvements there and maybe turn Berea Drive into right in, right out. That's an option that has been discussed, but nothing in any more detail than just talk at this point. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Siddhawan, and if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
All right, thank you, Brian and Chris. Commissioner Mark, would you like to start?
Yeah. Is there any way to blow that image up right there?
This one right here?
Yes. Okay, so what were the amount of crashes going northbound, rear end crashes going northbound, turning left on Berea? Do we recall those?
The 4? Is that right, Chris?
Or in the past 5 years.
So they were basically just rear-ended from being someone not paying attention as they were making a left-hand turn. I agree that road's not really used that much. I know a lot of people in that area, if they're during certain mornings or time of day, they'll go on down even further to Mason Creek to come out on Highway 5 opposed to trying to make that turn there. But there's times of the day which, that is used, but your figures, I would assume, are pretty much well correct because I don't see a lot of traffic coming in and out of there. I think that would help in regards to any type of congestion if somebody was making a left-hand turn going northbound, to keep just traffic flowing. Same as, making a right-hand turn going southbound. But I agree with you, but I don't see the only drawback of I agree with what you've done here. It looks fine, but I still don't see a lot of people, or I'm afraid what we're going to start having is a lot of complaints from people coming down Jade if they start using Jade to come out on the Highway 5, because that's more of really a lot of people don't really realize that those two roads connect. But yeah, it does not warrant a traffic light. I agree with you there. But I like the design. I think it might eliminate some of the crashes, but I guess from this being brought to the committee, any crash is too many. and, which I know, but we're not going to be able to avoid that. But I just thought with that intersection, there would be more crashes within the last 5 years than the numbers of what we're given.
Yeah, I was thinking there would be too, just visiting the site before any of the work started, that, you know, it would have a larger crash in over 5 years.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of those crashes that you see in those 11 are in the 2017 to 19 range, not too much in the 2020s, you know, during COVID. Well, you're talking about less traffic, potentially because of that. Yeah, the crashes certainly surprised me too. But knowing that now, I just, you know, you kind of want to look at your benefit cost ratio, and you will get some benefit, but with the construction costs where they're at now, they're pretty inflated. So to make this type of improvement, would that be something that Douglas would?
Director Rana, what's the estimated cost on this improvement?
With the realignment and addition of turn lanes, we're anticipating somewhere close to $1 million, and that's what we have allocated under SPLOST for this intersection. And just to carry that point, I too, given the numbers that we've seen, traffic and crashes of the past few years, the cost to benefit ratio just does not justify this project as is. Of course, we could build it as shown. That's a reasonable alternative that we see on the screen, but I believe there are more efficient ways that we could basically handle that movement. And then that does include limiting access on Berea and diverting the left turns to Jade. But then I also understand your concern about public not wanting that additional traffic on that Jade. But if we were to look at those both roads, I would say Berea and Jade both are local roads, and they both have their fair share of houses on those roads. So, and then again, there are not big volumes that we're talking about here. These are very relatively one of the least traveled roads, I would say, in the county.
Yeah, I agree with you. Those numbers, like I said, were quite shocking to me. I just thought it would be used more in the crash rates, or the amount of crashes would be much higher. You know, again, I'm not part of the transportation committee. I'll lay this back over to Commissioner Robinson, but I think this will be something that we might want to take a step back and evaluate just a little bit more.
Understood. And Commissioner Robinson, just to summarize it, I know you stepped away about what our findings were on this intersection. Is basically there's a significant construction cost that we have to consider when we undertake this project. From traffic to crashes, both our numbers have been extremely low, and basically if we consider the cost to benefit ratio, the recommendation I think would be to adopt a no build recommendation for this intersection. But if we were to pursue construction, there is an alternative that we can consider that caters or provides those turn lanes and slightly realigns the intersection. But speaking high level, the cost to benefit ratio really just justifies a no build recommendation here.
Gotcha. Now I caught the last part. How many crashes were there again? I didn't hear that part. How many crashes in that 3 or 4 or 5 year period of time?
11.
Total 11.
Oh, wow. So 2 a year. Got it. Still a crash is a crash is a crash. But duly noted. All right, so as a course of action, hopefully that presentation will satisfy Commissioner Alcaraz. Take this up, Director Rana, package it with the last one, and come back with an option. I hear it's no bill, that's fine, but administratively come back with a solution. We still will have to come up with something to try to cure this. But regardless, because you have $1 million that was allocated out of the current budget, I want to keep that in District 4. So if not on this, find an alternative, okay? But come back with the final options at our next meeting.
Yes, sir, we do. And I would like to discuss that with you and Commissioner Alcaraz offline. before we meet again next month. So we're prepared to discuss that.
Commissioner Alcaz, will you join me?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. Thank you for coming out for your presentation. Very satisfactory. And thank you for the recommendation. Sometimes it is no action. There is no bill, and the data doesn't lie. So thank you for your counsel and your guidance, and for your being a great professional service provider. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brian and Chris.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right. Director Ronald, bring us home now. Got one more, right? Did I lose him?
My bad. I'm trying to share my screen. Give me just 1 second. All right, the agenda is back up. The last item is actually a GDOT project. This is State Route 5, US 78 at Thornton Road intersection. This is a very heavily used intersection. We currently have roughly 60,000 people using this intersection on a daily basis. In the next 20 years, which is the proposed design year, but this number is to grow close to 80,000 users on a daily basis. The current levels of service are at LOS E, and if this remains as is, it's eventually going to a level of service F, which is a failing levels of service. In an effort to cure that, GDOT came up with this alternate intersection method, which is a quadrant roadway that I am now sharing on my screen, if everyone can see. What this does is that with the proposed design, the left turns from this intersections are diverted by creating a new quadrant road. And this basically gives you the same turning movement just at an offset. The cost of this is the new segment of roadway that you have to build, and the 2 additional signals that you can see on the screen, one on US 78 and one on State Route 6 Thornton Road. And just to show you how the turning movements work is, imagine if a person was approaching this intersection for a northbound approach, rather than turning left on Thornton, they would drive straight up to this new intersection, a new quadrant road, turn left onto this quadrant road, approach to the second new signal, and then turn right. So this basically takes away that left turn on Thornton Road. Same thing happens when you're coming southbound. You basically get diverted on the quadrant road, eventually to the 2 new signals, and then avoid that direct left turn on Thornton Road. When coming from Thornton Road to US 78, you get to drive straight, turn right onto the new quadrant, and then eventually drive straight on US 78 to avoid that direct left turn. Basic purpose being eliminating direct left turns from the intersection. And then the same thing happens when you're approaching eastbound on Thornton Road towards US 78. You get to turn left before even getting to the intersection onto the quadrant road, eventually turning right on US 78, or turning left on US 78, and basically avoiding that intersection. That being said, given the proposed design in the future, within the next 20 years, this intersection will be brought back to acceptable levels of service, which means there wouldn't be added congestion, and we are basically addressing the existing congestion with this design. This is a very unique design that's been proposed by GDOT, and of course it's gone through the regular state mandated design process and environmental documentation process, with some of it currently underway. As a local jurisdiction, we will be maintaining these 2 new signals, and part of that is we'll have to request GDOT to install those signals and eventually maintain those and maintain their electricity bills going forward. That is all I have on this project. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. And after that, I'll have a recommendation, or maybe not, because we don't have the voting members to recommend signal applications to full board. But I'll stop there for any questions.
No, I appreciate that. And again, all right, real quick for the public. Give me the top 3 most traffic volume in the county. It's what? Thornton Road, how many cars?
The one we're looking at 60,000 cars per day.
60,000. Who's number 2?
I am not exactly sure about that, but I would say it's Fairburn.
Okay. And what about Leeway Low versus Highway 5? I'm just trying to put things in context.
Yes, I think this being number 1 Next would be Fairburn, and then following that would be Lee Road.
So to concentrate, a cut through, two main arteries, north, south, and then one cut through. All right, so here we are, and what would be the cost of this again?
The cost of this is
this quadrant design, this innovation. I like engineers, y'all. I just
give me 1 second. I'll pull up the cost in just a second.
No, you're fine. And also behind that is going to be the question, which is I know that the state awarded $34 million. You were able to help secure that for us to help for what they call it truck-friendly lanes coming down. Obviously, from what point to what point? Does it reach all the way up here? I know it touches I-20, but how does the truck-friendly lanes impact us?
Truck-friendly lane actually is going through the concept evaluation, and that too has reached a no-build recommendation. So that $35 million is back to ARC to reallocate within the region.
Oh, wow. So just a symbolic, like, okay, didn't they know this already? I mean, before they told us that it was, I get it. Okay, a little press release. Okay, all right. I'm gonna let that go. Never mind.
Yes, sir. And just coming back to the cost of this quadrant road is $17 million.
17 million. And this is something that the state would do, or are we using SPLOST dollars? Are we a partner, or is it just totally theirs because it's 78 and it's Highway 6?
Yes, sir. 100% theirs, and they absorb the full cost. We'll be after they're done, they're gonna hand it over to us for maintenance, basically maintaining those signals.
Okay. So did one of our consultants do this design, or this strictly is the state? We didn't put no money into this. We didn't use any of our SPLOST to come up with a concept or design.
No, sir. We did not have any financial contributions to this project.
Right. And so why would we have to put forth an application if it's there?
Because, sir, the signals would become the responsibility of the local jurisdiction. So that's why we have to request the signals and eventually get those electrical connections secured and maintain them going forward.
But the project is warranted, and this is their design and solving it. And then
Yes,
we'll
sir.
move forward with it at 17 million versus the 34 for the other project. So, okay, I see the reallocation. They're going to keep it within. All right. Yeah, we got to wait to our next committee meeting to move on this. I want a full package with all three of these, okay?
Okay, understood. And that was the last item we had on the agenda. We also have some numbers put together for the request that was made to Board of Commissioners yesterday at the public comment, if you would like to discuss that.
Yeah, just
Otherwise,
real quickly. Yeah.
okay. So I'll share my screen again. So yesterday, one of the residents complained about the road conditions of Old East County Line Road. Now, the East County Line Road by itself, it's a little over 1 mile of a roadway, and I initially confused it with that, but that too needs some improvements, but it was scored roughly 30 out of 100. So it is bad, but not that bad. The segment that we are talking about is this small taper just off of East County Line Road. This road is called the Old East County Road. This seems like a road that used to be in existence a long time ago, and eventually we built a straight road which is now being used. However, this small segment, which is the Old East County Line Road, has 3 houses located on that. It is scored 8 out of 100, which is true, and per his complaint, this road is in bad condition. But just wanted to highlight that we are currently going through a yearly cycle. As Commissioner Robinson mentioned at yesterday's meeting, we have about 40% of our roadways that are in poor or bad shape that need improvements as we go forward. And we also discussed the vast number of miles that we are maintaining, which is 880 center lane miles of roadway that we are maintaining. But I've personally visited this site yesterday. We'll be evaluating any temporary relief we can bring to the situation. But luckily, this is a small segment of roadway, which would roughly cost about $20,000 in asphalt cost if we were to do this in-house and address this immediately if that's the will of this committee and eventually the board. But if we were to follow our process, we would include this in our proposed list of next year's resurfacing and present it to you for approval.
No, we've got a protocol in the process. I would say just put on a list.
Yes, sir.
Accordingly. Yep, just put on next.
Understood.
All right, but thank you for following up. And again, I always appreciate citizens' comments that are direct, that are again, a real concern and stuff. So I thank you for responding to that. All right, guys, I'm going to keep this going. All right, I'm going to pause for a minute since that seems to fulfill the agenda. To my fellow committee members, any closing comments before I get out of here? Director Cower, you good?
Yes, sir. I'm good. I'm sorry.
All
Trying
right.
to get my mute button off.
No, you're fine. Either Director Roberts or Deputy Director Wright, are you good?
We're good. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Everybody else, thank you for our supplemental members, David Good and all the consultants that may still be here. Appreciate your contribution. Director Rana, anything else you got? Or are we okay with the agenda?
No, sir, this is it.
Commissioner Alcaraz, you can get the final comment. How do you feel about this committee meeting? Anything that you're concerned about?
No, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I jumped on today. It was very informative. Really excited about a couple of these items that you have coming up here. So, well done, Ron.
Very
Thank you,
good.
sir.
Again, these are good. These are early looks for us through committee that we take to the full board. Usually when you've got two committee members that have already weighed in, that shapes it before it gets to the full floor. So these are important to give as guidance to staff as they prepare to come for the full board. So Director Ronald, you got your marching orders. This was a full agenda, not bad. Very rich quality presentation. So we got to pause on a couple items because again, we don't have a quorum, but nevertheless, it was very productive. Thank you for your leadership. And if there's nothing else that needs to come before this August 15th, 2023, Transportation Committee of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners, let this meeting stand adjourned.